Luke moved carefully through the broken land. The air was filled with dust, smoke, and the sound of far-off explosions. He could feel his heart beating fast in his chest as he looked for a safe place to hide. War had come to this planet, and now everything was dangerous for everyone. Luke was a young engineer, not a fighter. He had been sent to help fix machines and keep the camp running, but now the camp was gone. His team's transport had been hit by enemy fire. Some of his friends were gone, some had run in other directions, and Luke was alone. He walked for hours, trying not to make noise. He avoided broken trees and stayed away from open spaces. He knew that soldiers from both sides were everywhere. Luke just wanted to find shelter and wait for help, but everywhere he looked was burned or destroyed. He felt very small and very tired. At last, as the sun began to set, Luke saw something strange. A line of small rocks led up a hill, where a pile of boulders formed the entrance to a dark cave. It looked untouched, hidden by the broken earth. And dust. Luke moved closer, making sure no one was watching. He slipped inside and waited for his eyes to adjust. The cave was quiet and cool. The sound of war faded outside, and Luke felt safer for the first time all day. He sat down against the wall and took a deep breath. He was still scared, but at least he was not out in the open. As he looked around, he saw something even stranger. In the center of the cave, on a bed of soft moss and leaves, there were several large, glowing eggs. The shells were bright and smooth, with light blue and green patterns. They looked nothing like anything Luke had ever seen on Earth. He stepped closer, his fear forgotten for a moment. He remembered the stories people told about the Drakkar, the dragon-like aliens who lived on this planet. People said the Drakkar were dangerous and powerful, but some stories said they were wise and cared for their own. Luke stared at the eggs. He could not see any mother or father around. The eggs were alone. Luke felt a strange feeling in his chest. These eggs were just children, not fighters. They could not run or hide. If the war came here, the eggs would be in danger. He thought of how he would feel if he had to leave his own brother or sister alone in a cave during a battle. The idea made him sad. He thought about leaving. Maybe he could find another cave. Maybe he could wait for help to come. But each time he tried to stand up and walk away, he looked back at the eggs. He thought about the Drakkar who had saved some. Human children long ago, even when humans and Drakkar did not trust each other, those stories had always stayed in his mind. Luke decided he could not just walk away. He would stay and watch over the eggs, at least for a little while. Maybe the mother would come back soon. Maybe the war would end soon. He took off his pack and placed it near the eggs, making himself a small bed out of a thin blanket. He made sure the eggs were not too cold or too hot, moving some leaves to help keep them safe. As the night came, Luke listened to the quiet sounds inside the cave. He could hear the gentle hum from the eggs and his own breathing. He talked softly to the eggs, telling them about his home, about Earth, and about peaceful days in the sun. He did not know if the babies inside could hear him, but it made him feel better to talk. The next day, Luke woke up hungry and thirsty. He knew he had to find food and water. He left the cave carefully, marking the entrance with a small pile of rocks so he would remember how to get back. He walked through the silent woods, looking for anything he could eat. He found a few berries and some rainwater caught in a broken log. It was not much, but it was something. When Luke returned to the cave, the eggs were still there, safe and glowing. He felt a little better. He ate some berries and gave the rest to the eggs, even though he knew they could not eat yet. It just felt right to share. Luke began to make the cave safer. He used broken branches to hide the entrance even more. He put some sharp rocks outside, hoping they would keep animals or soldiers away. He also cleaned the cave, sweeping away dust and making a small fire to keep warm at night. As the days passed, Luke made a small life for himself and the eggs. He talked to them every day. He told them stories about how humans played games, how people worked together, and how families cared for each other. He sang a little, even though he was not very good at singing. It made the cave feel less lonely. One night, Luke heard voices outside the cave. He quickly put out the fire and moved close to the eggs. The voices were rough and angry. He could tell they were enemy soldiers. They were searching the area, looking for survivors. Luke held his breath and did not move. The soldiers came closer, and Luke prayed they would not see the hidden entrance. After a few long minutes, the voices faded. The soldiers moved away, and Luke let out a sigh of relief. He whispered to the eggs that they were safe. He promised them he would not let anyone hurt them. Every day, Luke worried the mother would not return. He worried he would not have enough food or water. But each time he thought about leaving, he looked at the eggs and knew he could not do it. They needed him. He was all they had. Luke did not know how long he would have to stay, but he knew he would do everything he could to keep the eggs safe. He hoped that one day someone would come, maybe help from the humans, maybe the mother dragon herself. Until then, he would watch over the eggs and protect them from the dangers of the war outside. As he fell asleep each night, Luke wondered what kind of world the baby dragons would be born into. He hoped it would be a world with less fighting, where humans and Drakkar could live in peace. But even if it was not, he would give the eggs their best chance. For now, in the quiet of the cave, Luke became their guardian. Luke woke up early, his body stiff and his stomach empty. The ground in the cave was hard, and he missed the soft bed from his home. He looked at the glowing eggs beside him. They seemed to shine even more in the early light. Luke smiled a little. He reached out and gently touched one of the eggs. It felt warm under his hand. He spoke softly, telling the eggs that he was still there and that he would keep them safe. Outside, the war did not stop. Sometimes the ground shook from bombs or loud machines moving past. Sometimes Luke could hear shouts and strange animal cries from the hills. He stayed low and quiet, only leaving the cave when he needed water or a little food. Each time he was careful to hide his path and to cover the entrance with branches and rocks. He did not want anyone to find the eggs. Luke tried not to worry. But he was afraid. He thought about what might happen if enemy soldiers came back. He knew they might not be kind if they found a human with Drakkar eggs. He also thought about the mother dragon. Would she think Luke was a thief or an enemy? Would she be angry? He tried not to let fear fill his mind. Instead, he focused on taking care of the eggs. He found ways to keep busy. He collected more moss and soft leaves to build a better nest. He made the place as warm and safe as he could. He fixed the small fire at the edge of the cave, making sure the smoke would not be seen from far away. He used rocks to shape a little wall around the eggs, hoping it would protect them from cold winds or animals. Most of all, Luke talked to the eggs. It made the long days less lonely. He told them about his favorite food like pizza and chocolate, ice cream. He talked about his old dog, Buddy, and how they used to play in the yard. He sang soft songs his mother had sung to him when he was little. Sometimes he laughed, even though the eggs could not answer back. It made him feel like he was not completely alone. The days went by slowly. Luke kept track by scratching small marks on the cave wall. Each night, he looked up at the tiny opening in the roof where he could see a bit of the sky. Sometimes he saw stars, and he wondered if anyone back on Earth could see the same stars and think of him. Food was a problem. There were not many berries left near the cave, and the ones he found did not fill his stomach. Sometimes he caught a small insect or found roots in the ground, but it was never enough. He became thin and weak, but he always gave some water to the eggs first before he drank. He wished he could do more for them. One afternoon, as Luke came back from searching for food, he heard a strange sound inside the cave. He stopped and listened. It was not the usual quiet or the soft humming from the eggs. It sounded almost like tapping. Luke hurried inside, worried that an animal had gotten in. But when he looked, he saw that the eggs were moving. One of them was shaking gently from side to side. Luke dropped his small bag and went closer. He watched as the egg rolled on the nest. The sound became louder, like tiny claws scratching from the inside. Luke could hardly believe it. He knelt down and put his hand on the egg. "It's okay," he whispered. "I'm here. You can do it." The other eggs started to move too. Their shells glowed brighter, and Luke's heart raced. He wondered if he should try to help, but he remembered stories about chicks and turtles on Earth. It was best to let them break out on their own for the rest of the day. Luke watched as the eggs wobbled and cracked. Tiny pieces of shell began to fall away. A small snout poked out from one egg, followed by a little claw. Luke smiled and wiped a tear from his eye. He could not remember the last time he had seen something so wonderful. By evening, the first hatchling had pushed its way out of the shell. It was small, about the size of a cat, but with shiny green scales and soft wings folded against its body. Its eyes were big and bright, and it looked at Luke without fear. Luke laughed quietly. "Hello there," he said. "Welcome to the world." Soon, more eggs started to hatch. One by one, little dragons came out, each a little different. Some were blue, some green, one had golden spots on its nose. They made soft noises, like tiny whistles, and wobbled around the nest on unsteady legs. Luke watched them with wonder. He felt proud and happy, but also worried. How could he care for so many? He hoped their mother would return soon. He did his best to help the hatchlings. He brought them water in his hands and found small bugs for them to eat. The dragons liked the water and drank greedily. They did not like the bugs at first, but after a while, they started to nibble. Luke used his old shirt to make a soft bed for them, and the hatchlings curled up together, chirping softly. That night, Luke did not sleep much. He watched the young dragons and made sure they stayed warm. Some of them came close to him, pressing their heads against his leg or hand. Luke petted them gently, speaking softly. He felt a strong bond with them already, as if they were his family. The next morning, Luke woke to the sound of the hatchlings playing. They chased each other around the nest, trying to flap their small wings. One of them got tangled in the old blanket, and Luke laughed as he helped untangle it. The world outside was still filled with war, but inside the cave, there was life and hope. Luke knew he would have to work even harder now. The hatchlings would need more food, more water, and more care. He worried about how he could keep them safe, especially if enemy soldiers came again. But for now, he was just happy to see the dragons alive and well. He sat in the cave entrance that day, watching the sun rise over the hills. He looked at the baby dragons sleeping in a pile and smiled. He promised them he would not leave them. Whatever happened, he would protect them. He would do his best to give them a chance. Even if the world outside was dangerous and dark. As the days passed, Luke felt less afraid. The hatchlings gave him hope, and he felt strong because they needed him. He started to believe that maybe, just maybe, things could change for the better. Luke woke up with the sound of little claws scratching on stone. The small dragons were moving around the cave, full of energy and curiosity. He smiled as he watched them play, chasing each other in circles and making soft, happy noises. It was hard to believe that only a few days ago, the eggs had been quiet and still. Now, the cave was alive with new life. He got up slowly, feeling sore but a little stronger than before. The hatchlings gathered around him, looking up with bright eyes. Luke knelt down and petted their smooth scales. Some were green, others blue, and one had a tail with golden spots. The smallest dragon climbed onto his lap, curling up and closing its eyes. Luke laughed quietly and stroked its head. "You're a brave one," he said softly. Every day Luke worked hard to take care of the hatchlings. He made sure the fire was always burning, but not too big. He did not want the smoke to draw attention. He collected water from a nearby spring and shared it with the young dragons, teaching them to drink from a small bowl he made from a broken helmet. The dragons learned quickly, following Luke's gentle hands and listening to his quiet voice. Finding food was not easy. The hatchlings needed more than Luke could find on his own. He searched the forest every day, picking berries, digging up roots, and catching small insects. Sometimes he caught a lizard or a frog, which the baby dragons liked the most. When he brought food back to the cave, the dragons crowded around him, chirping and snapping at the treats. Luke always made sure each one got their fair share. He was tired and hungry, but he felt proud every time a hatchling grew stronger. As the days passed, the dragons started to grow. Their wings got longer and their legs became stronger. They practiced flapping their wings, filling the cave with the sound of moving air. Sometimes they tried to jump and fly, but only managed to tumble across the soft moss. Luke laughed and cheered for them, clapping his hands and calling their names. He started to give them simple names like Blue, Goldie, Tiny, and Spot, just so he could tell them apart. At night, the hatchlings slept in a pile beside Luke. They curled up together for warmth and comfort. Sometimes they had dreams and made little noises in their sleep. Luke often stayed awake, listening to their soft breathing and thinking about what would happen next. He hoped their mother would return soon, or that the war would end and he could call for help. Until then, he knew it was his job to protect them. One afternoon, while Luke was out looking for food, he heard loud voices in the distance. He hid behind a tree and watched as a group of enemy soldiers walked past. They looked tired and angry, carrying heavy weapons and talking about searching for something. Luke stayed as quiet as he could, waiting for them to leave. When they were gone, he hurried back to the cave, his heart pounding. He checked the entrance and listened for sounds. The dragons were safe, hiding behind the little wall Luke had built. He quickly covered the entrance with more branches and rocks. He told the hatchlings to stay quiet and made sure the fire was out. The dragons seemed to understand. They pressed close to Luke, their eyes wide and frightened. That night, Luke did not sleep. He stayed awake, listening for any sound from outside. He thought about what he would do if soldiers found them. He did not have any weapons, only a sharp stick he had made. Still, he promised the dragons he would protect them, no matter what happened. He felt brave and scared at the same time. The next day, the danger seemed to pass. Luke decided to teach the hatchlings how to hide if trouble came again. He showed them a small hole in the back of the cave, just big enough for the young dragons to squeeze through. He practiced with them, leading each one through the hole and out to a hidden spot in the rocks behind the cave. The hatchlings learned quickly, and soon they could hide on their own. Luke was proud of them. After that, life in the cave became a little safer. Luke spent more time teaching the dragons simple things. He showed them how to dig for food, how to find water, and how to use their claws to scratch markings on the cave wall. Sometimes he drew simple pictures for them, like trees, stars, or the sun. The dragons watched him and tried to copy his drawings with their own claws. The bond between Luke and the hatchlings grew stronger. They trusted him, and he trusted them. When he was sad or tired, the dragons came close and sat beside him. When he laughed, they made happy noises and played around his feet. Luke began to feel less lonely. The dragons were his family now. One evening, as the sun set outside the cave, Luke sat by the entrance and watched the sky turn pink and gold. The hatchlings played near him, chasing fireflies and jumping in the soft grass. Luke felt peaceful for the first time in a long while. He wondered what would happen if the war ended and he had to leave the dragons behind. He did not want to think about it. For now, he was just happy to be with them. Sometimes, Luke remembered his home on Earth and wondered if anyone missed him. He hoped someone would come looking for him, but he also worried about what would happen if they found the cave. Would they understand why he had stayed? Would they want to take the dragons away? Luke hoped he could help everyone see that these young dragons were not dangerous, just lost and needing a friend. The days passed, and the hatchlings continued to grow. Luke was amazed at how fast they changed. Their wings got stronger, and sometimes they could jump and glide for a few seconds. Their voices became louder, and they started to play fight with each other. Luke watched and cheered, always ready to step in if things got too rough. One night, Luke sat by the fire, looking at the sleeping dragons. He felt tired but happy. He knew he had done the right thing by staying to protect the eggs and now the hatchlings. He promised them again that he would never leave them alone. As he lay down to sleep, the little dragons snuggled close, and Luke closed his eyes, feeling warm and safe. The war outside still raged on, but inside the cave there was hope and a new beginning. Luke did not know what the future would bring, but he knew he would face it with courage, for the sake of the young dragons who trusted him with their lives. Luke woke up early as the light of morning came into the cave. He stretched his arms and looked at the hatchlings sleeping beside him. Their small bodies were warm and soft. Their tiny wings twitched in their dreams, and sometimes they made small, happy sounds. Luke smiled as he watched them. He never thought he would be taking care of baby dragons, but now he could not imagine leaving them. He stood up and walked to the entrance of the cave. He moved the rocks and branches that hid the opening and looked outside. The world was quiet for now. The smell of smoke and burned earth was still in the air, but there were no voices or loud noises nearby. Luke listened for a long time, making sure it was safe before going out to find water. He carried a small pot he had made from an old metal piece. He followed the same careful path to the spring, always watching for signs of soldiers or wild animals dot as he filled the pot with water. He saw a bird fly across the sky. It was a small thing, but it gave Luke hope. If a bird could survive in this place, maybe he and the dragons could survive too. He carried the water back and made sure each hatchling had enough to drink. They drank quickly, making little chirps. Luke stroked their heads, feeling proud that they trusted him. The days started to feel almost normal. Each day, Luke found food for the hatchlings. He brought back berries, insects, and once he found some nuts that were safe to eat. The hatchlings grew stronger, their scales became brighter, and their wings grew longer. They tried to fly inside the cave, but they could only glide a short way before landing in a heap. Luke always laughed when they did this. He clapped his hands and cheered for them, telling them how strong and brave they were. Luke also started teaching the hatchlings more things. He showed them how to hide if they heard strange sounds. He practiced with them, telling them to run to the back of the cave and stay quiet. The hatchlings learned fast. Luke felt proud each time they listened to him and did as he asked. One afternoon, while Luke was fixing the small wall around the nest, the ground began to shake. Dust fell from the cave roof and the hatchlings ran to him in fear. The shaking grew louder and Luke felt a strange sense of danger. He hugged the hatchlings close and whispered to them that everything would be all right. The sound grew and grew until the cave entrance was filled with a giant shadow. Luke's heart stopped. He saw a huge shape moving in the sunlight. It was bigger than any animal he had ever seen. The shape had shining green and gold scales, long wings, and bright eyes that looked right into the cave. Luke knew at once this was the mother of the hatchlings. She was the dragon Matriarch, the one all the stories talked about. Her eyes were full of power and worry. She sniffed the air, and her great head moved close to the cave opening. Luke felt fear, but also a strange calm. He stood up, still holding the hatchlings. He did not run or hide. He knew the mother was looking for her babies. He spoke in a soft, careful voice, telling her he meant no harm. The dragon Matriarch watched him for a long time. Her eyes were sharp and full of questions. She looked at the hatchlings, then at Luke, then at the cave. The little dragons made happy noises when they saw her, but they did not run away from Luke. Instead, they stayed close to him. As if he was part of their family, Luke took a deep breath and explained everything. He told the matriarch how he had found the eggs alone in the cave during the war. He told her about the bombs and soldiers, about how he had hidden the eggs and cared for them when there was danger. He showed her the little nest he made, the water, and the food he had brought every day. The mother listened, her eyes never leaving Luke's face. She sniffed the hatchlings and licked their heads, making a deep sound that was soft and loving. She saw that they were healthy and happy, not hungry or hurt. She looked back at Luke and spoke in her own language, a series of deep, rolling sounds. Luke did not understand the words, but he felt the meaning. The mother was thankful, but also worried. She did not know if she could trust a human. Luke bowed his head and placed his hands open on the ground, showing he had nothing to hurt her or the hatchlings. He waited, his heart beating fast. He knew this was the most important moment since he had found the eggs. Slowly, the matriarch moved into the cave. She was so big that she had to bend low to fit. Her wings brushed the walls, and her tail knocked over some rocks. The hatchlings ran to her, jumping and chirping. She picked them up gently, one by one, and checked each one. She licked their faces and let them crawl on her back. When she was done, she looked at Luke again. For a long time, there was only silence. Then the matriarch nodded once, very slowly. She sat down and let the hatchlings climb onto her lap, but some of them went back to Luke and sat by his feet. The matriarch seemed surprised by this. She watched as the young dragons curled up beside Luke and pressed close to his side. Luke smiled and spoke softly to the mother. He told her he would stay if she wanted, or he would leave if she wished. He promised he had only wanted to help. The matriarch looked at the hatchlings and at Luke. She made another deep sound, softer this time. Luke felt the fear leave his heart. He knew he had been accepted, at least for now. The mother let him stay with the hatchlings. She watched him carefully, but did not stop the little dragons from playing near him or sleeping beside him. For the first time since the war began, Luke felt safe. That night, the matriarch stayed in the cave with her young. She kept them warm with her big wings, and Luke slept on the other side of the nest. He felt a deep peace, knowing he had done the right thing. He closed his eyes and listened to the sound of the dragons breathing, and he knew he had a new family. Even if he was different from them. As the sun rose the next morning, the matriarch watched Luke with calm eyes. She let him feed the hatchlings and help them drink. She even let him pet their heads as they curled up to sleep. The cave felt like a home, full of hope and new life. Luke did not know what would happen next, but he knew he had made a promise to protect the hatchlings. With their mother back, he felt stronger than ever. He was ready to face whatever the future would bring, together with his new dragon family. Luke woke up in the cave to the sound of the hatchlings playing near the dragon matriarch. The morning light made her scales shine like green and gold jewels. She watched her young with gentle eyes. Sometimes she made a soft humming sound, and the hatchlings would answer with happy chirps. Luke sat up and smiled. The cave felt warm and full of life now, not lonely and cold like before. He moved slowly so he would not disturb the family. The matriarch looked at him, and Luke nodded politely. She nodded back, her eyes thoughtful. Luke brought out some water in his pot and set it in front of the hatchlings. The matriarch watched as her young drank. When they finished, a few of the dragons ran over to Luke and pressed against his leg. The matriarch made a surprised sound. She watched how her children trusted Luke and how gentle he was with them. That day, Luke showed the matriarch the things he had done to keep the hatchlings safe. He pointed to the wall he built from rocks and the way he covered the cave entrance with branches and leaves. He explained with slow words and hand signs how he hid the nest during storms and brought food and water. The matriarch listened, watching everything closely. Then she did something Luke did not expect. She moved her head close to him and made a deep, rumbling sound. It was not a growl or a threat. It was almost like a thank you. The sound filled the cave and made Luke's heart feel full. The matriarch looked at him as if she finally understood he had not only cared for the hatchlings, he had saved them. She walked to the cave entrance and looked out at the land. Luke followed, standing at a respectful distance. The matriarch let out a loud call, a song that echoed over the hills. In the distance, more dragons answered. The land seemed to listen to her voice. After some time, the matriarch turned back to Luke and the hatchlings. She picked up two of her young in her great claws and looked at Luke. She made a low sound as if telling him to come. Luke followed, holding the rest of the hatchlings in his arms. Together they left the cave. Outside, the air felt fresh and new. The war sounds were far away now. Luke could hear birds and the wind in the trees. The matriarch led them up a hill, past rocks and broken trees until they reached a wide, hidden valley. There Luke saw more dragons, young ones and old ones. Big and small, they lived in peace, safe from the fighting. It was a secret place full of green grass, flowers, and a clear stream. The other dragons stared when they saw Luke. Some of them hissed and moved back, unsure about the human walking among them. But the matriarch spread her wings and let out a deep call. She set her hatchlings on the ground and watched as they ran to the other dragons. Then she turned to the others and spoke in her deep, rumbling voice. Luke could not understand her words, but he knew she was telling them about him. The matriarch spoke for a long time. She showed the dragons how her young trusted Luke, how he had saved them and cared for them. The dragons watched closely. Some came forward, curious, and sniffed the human who had become a protector to their kind. The hatchlings chirped and called for Luke, and he petted their heads softly. After a while, an old dragon stepped forward. His scales were silver, and his wings had many scars. He spoke with the matriarch in quiet voices. Then he looked at Luke and gave a slow, respectful nod. The other dragons started to do the same. They did not hiss or move away anymore. Instead, they watched with calm eyes as Luke walked among them with the hatchlings. The matriarch showed Luke a special spot by the stream where he could rest. She sat near him, always keeping an eye on her young. Sometimes she would speak to Luke in her own language, making gentle sounds. Luke tried to answer with soft words and smiles. The hatchlings played in the water, splashing and chasing fish, while Luke watched. He felt like he was in a dream. Days passed in the valley. The war outside grew quieter. Luke learned more about the dragons every day. He watched how they cared for their young, how they flew together, and how they shared food. The matriarch let him help feed the hatchlings and even taught him how to gather special plants that dragons like to eat. Sometimes the matriarch would leave for a while, flying high above the valley. She always came back to her young and to Luke. One day Luke saw something he never thought he would see. A group of humans appeared at the edge of the valley. They were soldiers, but their faces looked tired, not angry. The dragons watched them carefully. Luke ran to the matriarch and told her not to be afraid. He walked with her to the humans, holding his hands out to show he had no weapon. The humans were shocked to see Luke with the dragons. At first they were scared and pointed their weapons. Luke spoke quickly, telling them his name and that he was alive. He told them the dragons were not their enemies, that they only wanted to live in peace. The matriarch stood tall and calm beside Luke, her eyes soft but strong. The leader of the soldiers listened. He looked at Luke and at the dragons. He saw how the hatchlings ran to Luke and how the matriarch let him stand beside her. Slowly, the soldiers lowered their weapons. Luke spoke with them for a long time. He told them everything that happened, and how the war had hurt both humans and dragons. In the days that followed, the matriarch and the humans talked together. Luke helped them understand each other. He translated simple words and showed them that peace was possible. The valley became a place for meetings, where humans and dragons could talk without fear. The war outside started to end. People heard the story of the human who protected the eggs, and the dragon matriarch who trusted him. Luke was offered a way home, but he looked at the dragons and knew his heart was here. He wanted to help both sides live together. The matriarch did not want him to leave either. She called him the father of her clan, a great honor in dragon ways. The other dragons respected him, and the hatchlings loved him. As night fell on the valley, Luke sat by the stream with the dragons beside him. He watched the stars and listened to the soft sounds of peace. He knew he had found a new family and a new purpose. He would never forget the day the matriarch called him father of her clan, and he knew he would stay to help build a better world for humans and dragons together. The days in the hidden valley passed slowly at first, then faster as new life and hope filled the air. Luke felt like he belonged, though sometimes he still woke up surprised to see the matriarch's large green and gold body curled beside her. Children, the little dragons climbing on rocks and splashing in the stream. He helped gather food and water, and the dragons grew stronger. The matriarch let him help care for them, and the young ones always ran to Luke when they needed comfort or wanted to play. Word about the peaceful valley spread to both humans and dragons outside. Every week, small groups of people and dragons came to see if the stories were true. Some were scared, some hopeful, and some just curious. Luke was always there to welcome them. He showed everyone that humans and dragons could live together without fear. He spoke gently, explained things simply, and never tried to act like a hero. He only told the truth, that the war had hurt everyone and that peace was better for all. Sometimes, humans brought small gifts for the dragons, like fruit or special water. The dragons, in turn, shared shiny stones, feathers, and stories from their old times. The matriarch became the leader for her people, and humans started to listen to her too. Together, they made new rules for the valley. No fighting, no stealing, and everyone had to help care for the young. Soon, the valley became a place of peace where everyone was welcome. One morning, the matriarch called all the dragons and humans. Together, the hatchlings sat in a circle around her. Luke stood next to her, nervous but proud. The matriarch spoke in her deep, rolling voice, and Luke translated. She thanked everyone for coming and said the valley was now a safe place for both dragons and humans. She told how Luke had protected her eggs, even when he had no reason to help. She called him the father of her clan and told everyone that he was family now. The other dragons agreed, some bowing their heads and others coming forward to touch Luke's hand or shoulder with their noses. The humans clapped and smiled. Some of the children came forward to pet the hatchlings, and soon laughter filled the valley. Luke felt his eyes fill with tears. He had never felt so welcome anywhere before, but peace did not come easy for everyone. Far away, there were still angry people and dragons who did not trust each other. Some soldiers and old leaders tried to stop the meetings and said it was wrong for humans and dragons to be friends. Luke and the matriarch worked hard to show them they could build a better world if they worked together. Sometimes it was hard. People shouted and argued. Some dragons refused to speak to the humans at all. Luke was patient. He never shouted or walked away. He listened to every worry and promised to help find answers. The matriarch did the same. One afternoon, a group of angry soldiers came to the valley. They wanted to make the dragons leave and take Luke away. The matriarch stood in front of the hatchlings and spread her wings wide. Luke stood by her side and asked the soldiers to listen before making any choices. He explained how much the dragons wanted peace, how they were only fighting before because they were afraid. He told the soldiers how he had lived with the dragons and that they were gentle and wise, not monsters. The soldiers did not know what to do. They saw the hatchlings hiding behind Luke, peeking out with wide eyes. The matriarch did not growl or attack. She only spoke quietly, telling them that dragons could be friends. Finally, one of the older soldiers put down his weapon and asked if he could pet a hatchling. Luke brought over Goldie, the small dragon with golden spots, and the soldier gently touched its head. Goldie chirped and nuzzled his hand. The other soldiers laughed, and the anger left their faces. They left their weapons outside and sat with the dragons by the stream. Luke knew that things were changing for the better. As time went on, the valley changed too. People built small shelters from wood and stone. Dragons cleared new paths through the forest. Everyone worked together, sharing food, tools, and stories. The hatchlings grew taller and stronger. Some started to fly a little, gliding over the water or jumping from rock to rock. Luke cheered them on and helped when they fell. Luke often thought about his old life on Earth, but he did not feel sad. He knew he had a new family now. The dragons were his children, and the matriarch was like a sister or close friend. Sometimes they sat together at night and watched the stars. The matriarch would tell him old stories about her people, and Luke would tell her stories from Earth. The hatchlings listened to every word. One day, a group of leaders from the human side arrived, with gifts and a letter. They asked Luke to help write a new peace agreement between humans and dragons. Luke worked for many days with the matriarch and the leaders. They wrote simple rules so both sides could visit, trade, and live in the valley. Everyone signed the agreement, and a great celebration was held. People danced, and dragons sang deep songs that echoed in the hills. The matriarch gave Luke a special stone, smooth and warm, to thank him for his kindness. She called him her brother and father of her children. As the valley grew, more humans and dragons came to visit and sometimes to stay. Some brought their families and started new lives in peace. The hatchlings grew into young dragons. They remembered Luke's lessons and always stayed close to him. They protected the valley and helped newcomers feel safe. At night, Luke would walk by the stream and watch the stars reflect on the water. He thought about all the dangers and fear he had faced. He remembered how lonely he was at first, but now he felt full of hope and love. He knew the valley would stay safe as long as humans and dragons worked together. He felt proud every time the matriarch called him father of her clan, and every time a hatchling curled up beside him to sleep. Luke knew his life had changed forever. He was no longer just an engineer or a lost human in a war. He was part of something bigger, a new family and a new world. He promised himself that he would keep working for peace, teaching others and protecting his dragon family. The valley was his home now, and he would never leave it behind.